The $100 bill drifted through the air like a leaf in a storm and landed on the polished marble floor of the company headquarters. Dozens of employees stood frozen as they watched it slide to a stop at the feet of a maintenance worker carrying a worn black tool bag. The CEO who had thrown it stood nearby with a look of cold amusement on her face. Cameras flashed. Executives whispered. Security guards watched closely. It was supposed to be a moment of humiliation. Instead, it became the beginning of the day that changed hundreds of lives and destroyed a $100 million empire from the inside out. If you believe kindness matters more than power and that everyone deserves a second chance, take a moment to support stories that inspire compassion and hope. Ethan Carter had never imagined his life would lead him to that marble lobby. 5 years earlier, he had been a respected systems engineer with a promising future. Then tragedy struck when his wife passed away unexpectedly after a brief illness. Overnight, Ethan became the sole parent of his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. The grief was overwhelming, but the financial burden was even worse. Medical bills consumed their savings. His job disappeared during a company restructuring. Every month became a battle between paying rent and buying groceries. For years, Ethan worked whatever jobs he could find. He repaired air conditioners in the summer, fixed plumbing in the winter, and accepted night shifts cleaning office buildings. Sleep became a luxury. His hands grew rough from labor, and dark circles settled permanently beneath his eyes. Yet every evening, no matter how exhausted he felt, he returned home with a smile for Lily. She never saw the fear he carried. She only saw a father who read bedtime stories and promised that better days would come. Those better days seemed closer when Ethan found work at Sterling Dynamics, a technology giant worth nearly $100 million. The position was humble. He maintained equipment and handled facility repairs. The pay wasn't impressive, but it was stable. For the first time in years, he believed he might finally build a secure future for his daughter. Sterling Dynamics was led by Victoria Sterling, a CEO celebrated by business magazines and television interviews. To the outside world, she was a visionary leader. Inside the company, however, employees knew a different reality. Fear ruled every hallway. Workers avoided eye contact. Managers concealed problems rather than solving them. People who questioned decisions rarely stayed long. On the morning everything changed, Sterling Dynamics was hosting a major investor event. Reporters crowded the lobby. Executives rehearsed presentations. Millions of dollars depended on impressing the guests. Ethan arrived early to repair a malfunctioning display screen near the entrance. As he worked quietly, Victoria entered surrounded by assistants and photographers. One of the investors accidentally dropped a folder, scattering papers across the floor. Ethan immediately stepped forward to help. Before he could bend down, Victoria stopped him. She seemed irritated by the disruption and eager to demonstrate authority in front of the crowd. Then came the moment nobody forgot. Victoria pulled a $100 bill from her purse and tossed it onto the floor near Ethan. She gestured toward it with a dismissive smile. The crowd laughed nervously. Some employees looked away, unable to watch. Ethan stared at the bill for several seconds. He thought about overdue utility payments. He thought about Lily needing new shoes. He thought about the countless nights he had skipped meals so his daughter could eat. $100 could help. But then he looked around the room. He saw frightened employees pretending not to notice. He saw managers terrified of speaking honestly. He saw investors admiring a leader who treated people like objects. Slowly, Ethan set down his tool bag. He didn't reach for the money. Instead, he looked directly at Victoria. His expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. Then he said the words that silenced the entire building. "Your $100 million empire is already dead." The lobby became so quiet that the sound of distant elevators seemed deafening. Victoria's confident smile vanished instantly. The reporters stopped taking photographs. Investors exchanged confused glances. Security guards hesitated. Most people expected Ethan to be escorted out immediately. Instead, something unexpected happened. Victoria laughed, not because she found the statement amusing, but because she couldn't believe anyone would dare challenge her publicly. She demanded an explanation. Ethan remained calm. Years of hardship had taught him something many executives never learn. When you've already lost almost everything, fear loses its power. He explained that companies rarely collapse because of competitors. They collapse because leaders stop listening. They collapse because employees become afraid to tell the truth. They collapse because arrogance replaces integrity. He pointed toward the malfunctioning systems throughout the building and described problems that maintenance teams had reported for months without receiving attention. He explained how talented workers were leaving every week. He described departments hiding critical mistakes because they feared punishment more than failure. The room grew increasingly uncomfortable. What Ethan didn't know was that several investors had already been concerned about Sterling Dynamics. Recent reports showed unusual delays, declining innovation, and unexplained expenses. Hearing an ordinary employee describe exactly the same issues confirmed their suspicions. Victoria dismissed his concerns as nonsense. The event continued, but the damage had been done. Within days, investors began investigating internal operations more closely. Auditors examined financial reports. Employee surveys revealed shocking levels of dissatisfaction. Anonymous complaints flooded corporate offices. Stories emerged about toxic management practices that had remained hidden for years. Meanwhile, Ethan expected to lose his job. Instead, employees began approaching him privately. Many thanked him for saying what they had been too afraid to say themselves. Others shared information about systemic problems throughout the company. As weeks passed, the situation worsened for Sterling Dynamics. Key executives resigned. Major contracts disappeared. Investors demanded leadership changes. News articles questioned the company's future. Victoria fought desperately to maintain control, but the culture she had created was working against her. Nobody trusted her. Nobody wanted to defend her decisions. The empire looked strong from the outside, yet its foundation had been rotting for years. One rainy evening, Ethan returned home after another long shift. Lily greeted him at the door holding a school drawing. It showed a father standing beneath a bright sun, holding his daughter's hand. At the bottom she had written a simple message, "My hero." Ethan felt tears fill his eyes. He had spent years believing success meant money, promotions, or recognition. Yet in that moment, he realized he already possessed something far more valuable. He had his daughter's love. Several months later, Sterling Dynamics announced a dramatic restructuring. Victoria Sterling resigned under intense pressure from investors and board members. A new leadership team took control and immediately began rebuilding trust within the organization. One of their first actions surprised everyone. They invited Ethan to participate in employee advisory meetings. They valued his honesty, practical experience, and understanding of frontline challenges. He wasn't a corporate executive. He wasn't wealthy. Yet his perspective helped guide important changes throughout the company. The transformation wasn't easy. Rebuilding trust never is. But slowly morale improved. Employees felt heard. Departments cooperated again. Innovation returned. Most importantly, people stopped living in fear. Years later, Ethan sat in a renovated office overlooking the city skyline. He had earned a respected leadership role through hard work and integrity. Across the room stood a framed photograph of Lily, now preparing for college. Visitors often asked about the photo. Ethan always smiled when he looked at it, because every achievement in his life traced back to the same source: the determination to remain kind and honest even when circumstances encouraged bitterness. Before we reach the end, if this story touched your heart, share your thoughts with others who might need a reminder that dignity is worth more than pride and kindness is stronger than power. Special request: comment below with one word that describes what this story made you feel. The lesson wasn't that a poor man defeated a powerful CEO. The lesson was that truth eventually exposes what arrogance tries to hide. Real leadership is not measured by wealth, titles, or the size of a company. It is measured by how people are treated when nobody is watching. A $100 bill thrown onto a floor revealed more about a leader than any business award ever could, and a single father carrying a worn tool bag proved that courage doesn't belong only to the powerful. Sometimes it belongs to the person who has suffered deeply, loved fiercely, and refused to surrender their dignity. In the end, Ethan never picked up the money. Instead, he lifted something far more valuable: the hopes of everyone who had forgotten that their voices mattered. And that is why, long after the empire nearly collapsed, people remembered not the CEO who ruled through fear, but the father who stood calmly in the storm and chose respect over humiliation.